and welcome to another Checiegirl Creations DIY video. So today I will be doing an art journal page in this sketchbook, and you can see I've done quite a few pages. I used to do a couple like Instagram live videos, so those are where most of those pages were done. So I tend to just chuck paint in there whenever I'm working on another project, but didn't use up all my paint because I don't want to waste it. So you can see I'm starting off with like a blue, green, kind of yellowy background, and I think there's some gold on there too. And I'm just taking this dictionary paper. It's a German dictionary. One of my mum's friends gave it to me. So I thought I would use it on this page. And it's quite like light. It's not very thick paper, which is cool. So unlike the other book paper I have, it's a different like GSM. So the GSM is like the weight of the paper. So I'm cutting them into kind of circles. I'm not very good at cutting things freehand, so it's just a wonky circle. And I wanted it to be that I can see the background through the space, which is why I didn't just have like a full circle. I had it like where it was empty in the middle. Don't know if that makes sense. And then I wanted to have some like circles in the middle of those, so I thought that would look quite cool. And now I'm going to use some Rose Madder mixed acrylic paint, and that is by Reeves. And you can see that gesso part at the top of the screen. I thought I was going to use it, but I didn't end up using it in the end. So I'm just using this red paint to fill in any white areas, and I'm just put that paper between the two pages so they don't get stuck together. That's a good way to protect the pages behind. And I'm trying not to go too heavy-handed with the paint because I do still want to keep the background. But I added the red paint. I felt like there just needed to be like a warm color and a contrasting color as well. Since I wasn't going to do anything to the book paper, I wanted to leave that plain. So I'm just going in, I'm dry brushing that, and that is a flat brush by C. White of Brighton. And I'm just dry brushing it, and I don't want it to be too much of a thick layer, so I'm just making sure to blend out anything that's quite a thick layer. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and I'm going to add some white, and that is Crawford and Black, and you can get that from the works. And I'm using a palette knife there. Actually, I'm not sure if I let that red layer dry. I don't think I did, but it's quite a thin layer, so it didn't have to dry for too long. So I'm just using the white to just kind of brighten up the background. I found it looked kind of dark, and even though the book paper would still stand out, I just didn't like how dark it looked. And now I'm feeling as if I've taken away too much color, and I remember that there's some yellow peeking through there, so I'm using that medium yellow, and that is also a Reeves paint, and I'm using a palette knife as well, and that's quite a small palette knife. That's really my favorite size. I do like to use that a lot. It's quite small, so I can make small strokes, but I can always make them bigger and adjust how I want it to. And again, just applying it in the same way I did with the white. Try not to cover up too much of the white, and try not to make it look too busy, though the background is very busy, but I did like how that looked at the end. I was kind of going for a busy background anyway. So I did let that dry. I dried that with a heat gun, so it did bubble up a little bit. You might see it in the photos, but not that noticeable. So now I'm just placing the book paper circles where I wanted them, and I'm just adjusting that one. I thought that looked like it had a bit of a corner. I didn't want that to look like that. So now I'm going to use some PVA glue. I got that from Poundland, and this plastic palette knife. If you follow me on YouTube, you will know that a palette knife is my favorite way to apply glue to adhere things to what I'm working on. So I'm just sticking down all those book paper bits. And while I'm doing that, I thought I would just remind you that my mixed media box is still available to pre-order, and if you order it before the 15th, you'll well, it'll be posted on the 15th. So please do follow the links in the description below to purchase your very own June mixed media box. as well as any previous boxes that you might be interested in. And you can also go to the playlist where you can see all the previous unboxing videos. So back to the video. I'm using this fine line like applicator. I got that earlier this year, and this one has white acrylic paint with some like water mixed in it. And I'm sorry I do end up off screen a couple times. I wasn't really completely paying attention to what I was doing and kind of forgot I was filming. But I'm basically just going around. I'm going quite quickly. Now this is sped up, so of course this isn't the speed I was going at, but I was going quickly because I didn't want it to be like too perfect. I wanted it to look quite sketchy and like a doodle. So I went around all the circles and gave them petals, and then I'm going in between the spaces and doing lines. And I found that look a little bit like bicycle wheels. So yeah, I'm just doing that, and I'm using white because I figured it would stand out quite a bit against that busy background, and it did, which I was happy about. And that is quite small. I think that's by Joy Crafts. I got it when I went to this kind of like craft, not craft fair. I'll link to the haul video, and then I'll explain it in the whole video because I can't think of the right word at the moment. So yeah, so I gave them stems and leaves, and you can see it's just quite quick and sketchy. I didn't want this page to just be quick. I just wanted to do some experimenting. So it was just a quick page, so I wanted everything to be quick and sketchy. And I'm just adding a border. I normally edge the page with like my Stays On ink pad, but I thought I would do something different to finish that off. And you see I'm trying to be kind of careful so that I don't smudge anything on my flowers because it's not dry yet. And you do have to let it dry for a little bit, just so that you don't smudge anything, or just be very careful like what I'm doing. And amazingly, I didn't smudge anything. I was actually really impressed by that. So I'm just adding some dots in a few areas, still using that white paint. So that's that layer. And then I'm going to add some more outlines, but with black in a little bit. Oh, here we go. So I'm going around the circle this time, and you'll see there. And again, it wasn't perfect. I did go a little bit slower with this one though, because I was trying to follow the outline of the cutout. But you see again, really sketchy, not perfect at all. And I had to add a little bit of water the first time I added this, and I'll also link to the page in the friendship journal I used these on for the first time. I didn't add any water, and I did add water to the white, so I had to add some water today because it was just too thick. And in that previous video, which I'll link in the iCard in the top right hand corner, I sketched a face, so like the whole page was done using those fine liners. So I'm going around, and you can see that I missed the inside of that like cutout, but I will go in and do that in a little bit. But it's really quite easy using these, and what's really nice, if you don't want a perfect outline or like sketch, you can use these because it won't turn out perfect because it's paint. And if you go quite quickly, it will look really nice and sketchy and like doodly and everything. So I'm going to add some dots and right now, and then I'll go back in and add those extra outlines that I forgot to do in a second. Oopsie, you see, I think I'm finished, but then I realized it's like, you know, when you know that something's missing but you're not too sure. And then I realized I wanted to as well add a border, but this time I didn't go straight with the lines. I went wavy so that you can still see the white lines underneath, and that I thought looked quite nice. I like how that turned out. And I didn't want to go over the petals that were close to the edge because the petals are supposed to be above the border. And this also adds a little bit of texture as well. The paint, it doesn't really dry flat, it does dry a little bit raised. Okay, so here we are. Now I'm going to add that extra outline. And as well, one thing to remember, especially if you're working with black, squeeze off on like a piece of scrap paper to make sure that there's no bubbles caught in the nozzle, because if you squeeze really hard, the bubble would like pop and then you could end up with a very messy mistake. And I didn't do that this time, even though I did risk it quite a few times. But if you do that, you can either try wiping it off or just going with it and say maybe making the line a little bit thicker than you wanted it before. And just, sometimes you just have to wing it if you make a little bit of a mistake. But in mixed media, there are really no mistakes. You can either just dress over if you don't like it or just go with it. So now I'm using these 3D pearl effects, and these are by Dovecraft, and you can see this a little bit thicker than the paint. And I'm just using that to, like, in a way, add highlights. And that's silver, by the way. I don't know if I said that already. So I'm doing it where, like, say the light would hit, and then I'm also going into the middle of like that black circle in the middle of the flower. And I thought that looked quite nice. And I'll also go around adding some dots in a few areas. I'm probably doing that off screen now. Apologies for being out of frame again. And one of the things I like to do with 3D pearl effects is when I put them down, because it's quite thick, it ends up with like a point. So what I do is I flick the back of the page and then they flatten out. So you can see I'm flicking them now. This was a bit trickier to do. Normally I do this on a card. That's when I use my 3D pearl effects most. So it's nice and easy to flick, but I had to like kind of lift up the page without smudging anything because nothing was really dry, and flick it. And I thought that looked a lot better. So now I'm taking this silver acrylic paint, and this is from Wilko's. It's just some like cheap metallic paint. I tend to buy kind of cheap metallic paints anyway, because I do use them quite often, so I go through them kind of quickly. So I'm just using those to add again highlights to the leaves, and now I'm going to splash some on. And I'm also going to splash on some white paint and black paint. I found that the background just needed to be tied in a little bit more with the flowers, but not so much that they blend in. So what am I doing? Oh yes, I'm adding the splashes. I was just taking some of that paint from the fine liner and I'm putting it onto a palette that I have out of frame. And now I'm going to add some like shadows to where the light wouldn't be hitting. So I'm using this like liner brush I got from Hobbycraft, and if you've been watching my videos recently, whenever I talk about the fine liners, I talk about how much I love them because they're so fine. I can add really small details like what I'm doing now. And they can go into quite tight spaces, so which is why I love them so much. So I'm just going around adding those, and again, I'm not doing it perfectly and it's quite watered down. More than I normally would, but I didn't want it to like overpower what was already on the page. I did just want to make the flowers stand out just a little bit. So I'm just adding really sketchy lines just quite quickly, not really paying attention to what I'm doing that much. I didn't want it to be perfect. I was really enjoying the whole like sketchy look. And I'm just splashing off the excess paint I have on the brush. I like to do that a lot. I feel as if I'm using the paint to my advantage there and just finishing it off there. So I finished all my splats, and now let's see, what am I going to do? Oh yes, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to put like as a quote or word, and I do apologize. I painted like the scrap of this dictionary paper with some white paint that I used earlier, but for some reason I don't know if maybe I didn't click record or I lost it. I think I probably didn't click record, and I just wanted to paint like a white background just to push back the letters on the words on the paper, sorry, a little bit back into the background, so that when I painted the word dreams, though I don't know why I put dreams, so I really meant to put dreams, so I just teared off the S, using some black paint and that fine line brush again, well, that liner brush, sorry, again. And I'm just tearing off the border a little bit. And you can see that pushing back the dictionary paper just made it as if it was a background, so then the words stuck out a lot. And then this got a little bit corrupted. So I lost some footage of me outlining the quote with the white fine liner. And then I used the end of a paintbrush and dipped it into the silver paint I used earlier and was putting dots in between the petals. I thought the petals looked a little bit stark. So now I'm outlining the quote, well, the phrase, sorry, with my black fine liner. And I'm adding that 3D Pearl effects, and that's done. Okay, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And do click that bell to get notified whenever I upload a video. And don't forget to click on those links for the Mixed Media subscription box. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you join me again for another video. Bye!